Imagine this. You awaken in a silent room, the pale dawn light slipping through a crack in the curtains. You look into the mirror and lock eyes with yourself, yet the face staring back feels like an actor's mask, a facade you've rehearsed and perfected over years. Every smile feels borrowed, every inflection calibrated. Who are you, really? Is the you behind this mask the real proprietor of your thoughts, or merely a servant to some deeper, unseen force? You step into the street, and instantly the mask contorts itself to match the expectations of onlookers, confident when you must be, deferential when you must not offend, jovial to conceal your unease. You wonder, as you navigate this human flux, whether any of these gestures belong to you, or if you're simply performing roles written long before you learn the lines. How much of your personality is genuine, and how much is an intricate armor crafted to shield you from vulnerability, rejection, and the chaos of raw authenticity? Herein lies the paradox. In our frantic quest to present a coherent self, we may have unintentionally shackled ourselves more tightly than any external adversary ever could. What if your personality ever equipped you to deliver every aesthetic you embrace, every moral crusade you wage, the vibrant expression of your inner world, but instead a defense mechanism honed by survival, seeded by fear, and watered by social demand? Feel the tension coil in your gut. Consider the nights when, despite your bravado, you lie awake haunted by the sense of hollowness. Consider the friendships that crumble when your guard slips, or the fleeting triumphs that taste of ash, because the applause felt like a transaction rather than a celebration of your truth. What if every persona you inhabit is a mask designed to deflect the sharp edges of the world and keep your fragile self intact? And if so, what lies beneath the mask? Is there a self at all, or merely a series of defensive echoes? Rhetorical questions echo in your mind. If your personality is built to protect you, from what dangers does it shield you? From the sting of rejection, the abyss of meaninglessness, the terror of being truly seen and possibly dismissed. To what extent are your convictions your own? And to what extent have they been borrowed from the collective narratives you were taught to adopt? And if these narratives prove inadequate or oppressive, who are you when the scaffolding collapses? The weight of these questions presses on you. Philosophers from ages past have wrestled with similar burdens. Nietzsche warned of masks we wear to avoid confronting the void. Sartre whispered that every self is a project, forever in progress yet never complete. Jung illuminated the shadow self, lurking beyond conscious persona. Frankl urged that meaning is discovered, not invented. Yet these insights, powerful as they are, remain whispers in the cavern of your defense-built identity, hints of a deeper current you've never allowed yourself to explore. Now, imagine the cold iron taste of revelation on your tongue, the moment you confront the truth that the most potent shield can also be the deadliest cage. Imagine standing at the edge of a precipice where every cherished trait, your humor, your convictions, your temperament could shatter and reveal the raw self beneath. Would you step back, clutching your mask tighter, or would you dare to peel it away, exposing the trembling vulnerability you've been taught to bury? This is the great question. Is your personality truly you, or is it simply an intricate defense mechanism orchestrated by fear, social pressures, and the ancient survival instinct? And more importantly, what would you become if that mechanism were dismantled? The answer doesn't lie in mere self-analysis or motivational rhetoric. It demands a plunge into the shadows, a willingness to feel unprotected, to stand naked before the world and say, "This is me Ngadi, uncertain, unrefined." To reach this moment requires understanding the hidden architecture of your defenses, and that journey begins now. So take a breath, steel your nerves, and prepare to follow me down the rabbit hole. In the next section, you'll encounter the psychological and philosophical roots of this hidden problem, where you'll see how centuries of thought have shaped the walls of your mind, and why breaking them down might be the most radical act of all. The walls you built around yourself were not laid overnight. They are the silent inheritance of countless minds before you, philosophers, poets, therapists, all pointing to the same hidden problem, that what you call personality is, at its core, a fortress wrought from fear. Ask yourself, when did you first learn to protect the tender self within? As a child, you discovered that making faces got laughter, speaking softly avoided scolding, showing anger invited punishment. Each lesson was a brick in your emotional rampart. Soon enough, you mastered this architecture. You performed the agreeable one, the confident one, the smart one, each persona a shield against the unpredictable slings of life. Carl Jung named these masks personas, derived from the Latin for mask. He saw each persona as a necessary adaptation, a public face to meet the world's demands. But for Jung, danger lay in mistaking the mask for the true self. This danger is precisely the trap you inhabit. You wear your persona so faithfully that the authentic, vulnerable you is relegated to the shadow Jung's shadow self, an exile who whispers through dreams and neuroses, begging to be recognized. Yet the roots run deeper even than psychology. Friedrich Nietzsche declared that behind every morality, every creed, lurks the will to power a defense mechanism against the meaninglessness that yawns at the edge of consciousness. You cling to your convictions not solely because they resonate with your values, but because they ward off the abyss. They are armaments in a metaphysical battle you barely comprehend. Arthur Schopenhauer observed humanity strangled by desire, locked into endless cycles of craving and suffering. Your persona, with its carefully chosen style, speech, and social scripts, emerges as a bulwark against this suffering. You craft your identity to feel in control, to own some semblance of desire and fulfillment, believing that if you can command your image, you can command your fate. Aldous Huxley, surveying the modern world, warned that mass society manufactures consent, grooming each individual to adopt predetermined roles. Your social media profiles, your curated friendships, even your career choices each echoes this conditioning. They whisper pre-written narratives about what a successful, likable, or worthy person looks like. Every click, like, and share reinforces these scripts, further cementing your defenses. Jean-Paul Sartre took the mask to an existential extreme. Existence precedes essence, he said, meaning you are condemned to choose who you become. But you never choose in a vacuum. You choose from among roles handed down by culture, history, and upbringing. Your freedom is laced with anxiety, because the frame of acceptable personas is narrow. To step outside it risks isolation, ostracism, and the terror of an uncharted self. Viktor Frankl, in The Crucible of Auschwitz, discovered that even in the most brutal dehumanization, individuals cling to meaning. But that meaning is often bound to a narrative. Parent, professional, believer, patriot. These narratives scaffold your purpose, but also hem in your authenticity. When the scaffold trembles through loss, failure, or awakening, the persona trembles with it, threatening collapse. So you see how psychology and philosophy converge on the same hidden force. Your personality is an edifice erected to buffer you from suffering, rejection, and the void. But every edifice casts a shadow, and the darker that shadow, the less light can penetrate to the core of your being. Consider the societal machine at work. From the cradle, you are funneled into role: student, employee, consumer. Schools reward compliance. Workplaces champion conformity. Media celebrates archetypes. Deviance is policed not only by law but by gossip, social judgment, and subtle exclusion. Fear seeps into your bones. Fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance. Your defenses grow ever more complex until you scarcely remember the raw emotions you protect yourself from. Worse still, cognitive science shows that these personas shape your perception of reality. The brain, hungry for coherence, filters experiences to fit existing. You recall the compliments that confirm I am witty, and forget the times you interpret neutral glances as admiration if you believe. You recaptivating awe as disdain if your persona trembles with insecurity. Thus, the very defense designed to keep you safe warps your lived experience into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yet these filters are not immutable. They read the echoes of your defenses played on the stage of your consciousness. If you could trace them back to their sources, each childhood slight, each societal expectation, each philosophical denial, you'd see the fragile scaffolding holding up the mask. Imagine peeling back the layers, the persona secured by fear of ridicule, the beliefs cemented by dread of the void, the routines fortified by terror of chaos. Beneath, you might find a stunned child who learned early that emotional honesty invites harm. You might find a fragmentary self, unpracticed in authenticity. You might find nothing but a gaping emptiness, terrifying, yet pregnant with possibility. And that is precisely the deeper consequence awaiting disclosure, that your defenses, once understood, can be unraveled. But unraveling requires courage. for it means stepping into unknown terrain. It means confronting the question, what remains when every mask is stripped away? Feel the tension build. You've navigated the psychology of persona, the philosophical justifications, the societal engine driving this machinery. You stand at the threshold where understanding becomes action. Behind the curtain of defenses lies the crucible of transformation, the place where you can dismantle the fortress and rediscover yourself. But to do so, you must first recognize the full weight of those defenses, how they formed, how they persist, and how they warp your reality. Only then can you claim the radical agency to dismantle them. In the next section, you will see how these unseen consequences shape not only your inner life, but the collective destiny of humanity, and why the urgency to break free has never been greater. Here, in the hidden corridors of your psyche, the fortress you've built begins to leak its most insidious poison. Unseen consequences that ripple through every corner of your life and the world you inhabit. You believe your persona is a shield, but it also functions like tinted lens, warping your vision of reality and of other people. This distortion matters not just for you, but for everyone you touch. Imagine you're in conversation with someone whose eyes reflect genuine curiosity, but your defense mechanism, ever vigilant, interprets it as judgment. Instantly your words retreat, your tone hardens, and the fragile bridge of connection shatters before it can even form. You walk away convinced they were unimpressed or dismissive, when in truth, you never allowed yourself to be seen. Multiply that moment by hundreds, by thousands, and consider the lonely isolation that blooms from a mind too busy defending itself to engage. Your defenses also seep into your relationships like an invisible toxin. When your partner questions a decision, your persona construes this as a direct assault on your competence. You lash out or withdraw. Vulnerability, that sacred path to intimacy, becomes a minefield you dare not cross. You cling instead to roles, the reliable one, the caretaker, and memorize the lines he must speak to maintain a semblance of harmony. But harmony sustained by armor is brittle. At the first crack, the whole edifice shatters. Notice how your persona impacts collective life as well, in boardrooms and classrooms, across political rallies and social media platforms. People assume assigned roles, the leader, the critic, the follower. Each performance reinforces conformity. Dissenting voices, authentic voices, remain muffled in discord threatens the carefully maintained balance. The result? A culture of echo chambers, hollow consensus, and a creeping numbness to nuance. Entire societies become locked in defensive postures, unable to evolve or truly empathize. Neurology confirms this distortion. Your brain's amygdala, the sentinel of threat, constantly scans for signs of danger. Every unfamiliar gaze, every unexpected question triggers the alarm. Cortisol floods your system, and your prefrontal cortex's seat of rational, leaving you ruled by instinctive defenses. Over time, neural pathways strengthen around avoidance, rejection, sensitivity, and self-protection. You literally become addicted to your own armor. Moreover, cognitive biases, anchoring, confirmation bias, fundamental attribution error thrive behind your defenses. You latch onto evidence that supports the persona you've constructed. You disregard the rest. When you fail, you blame circumstances or others. When you succeed, you credit your inborn genius. You're ensnared in a feedback loop that cements your identity but starves your potential. Because growth demands humility and openness, qualities your defenses relentlessly erode. Culturally, the consequences are vast. A generation raised on curated perfection, Instagram highlights, LinkedIn accolades. Viral moments develops, collective defense mechanisms meant to ward off perceived inadequacy. Mental health crises skyrocket as the price of maintaining the mask becomes too steep. Anxiety, depression, and addiction flourish in the shadows where raw emotion is forbidden. We build walls around our individual psyches, and society responds with ever higher ramparts of technology, ideology, and spectacle. Do you feel the urgency yet? The longer you dwell behind your defenses, the more your inner world calcifies into echo chambers of fear and self-justification. Innovation, creativity, and genuine connection with her. You become a spectator in your own life, watching reruns of rehearsed dialogues instead of forging spontaneous, alive moments. The unresolved tension between your armored self and your authentic core fractures your sense of purpose, leaving you adrift in a sea of roles with no anchor. But perhaps hardest of all, These unseen consequences breed a false sense of security. You pat yourself on the back for being resilient, strong, collected. You pride yourself on your emotional control. Never mind that control is but a gilded cage. In truth, you're trapped in a performance whose stakes are your very essence. And every day you renew your vow to keep playing the part, even as you feel the heavy cost in loneliness, in creativity stifled, in empathy dulled. If this trap seems inescapable, take heart. Recognizing the depth of its consequences is the first step toward liberation. Every tyranny sows the seeds of its own downfall, and every defense mechanism you've erected can be unlearned. But to do so, you must acknowledge the full breadth of the wound, the fractured relationships, the misperceived realities, the neural grooves worn deep by fear. Only when you face the damage can you summon the will to heal. Here is the stark truth. The unseen consequences of your defensive persona are not peripheral. They are the defining conditions of your life. They dictate how you love, how you work, how you dream, and how you die. And for as long as you remain unaware, you will continue to reenact the same dramas, convinced you're living authentically, when in fact you're merely upholding a carefully scripted narrative. Yet within this bleak panorama lies a spark, the possibility of awareness. The cracks in your defenses are the pathways to revelation. They shimmer with the promise that, beyond fear and conformity, lies a self unmediated by disguiser, self capable of genuine connection, of radical creativity, of profound freedom. In the next section, you will learn how to fan that spark into a flame, how to rebel against the defenses you've relied on, break the neural patterns of fear, and claim a life unbound by pre-written roles. Prepare to discover a counterintuitive path of rebellion, not of grand gestures, but of small, courageous acts that will erode the fortress from within. Feel the surge of something stirring beneath the ruins of your defenses, a flicker of rebellion that refuses to be stamped out. You stand at the threshold of a radical shift in perspective. What if the very masks you've worn for so long could be enlisted not to protect you, but to reveal you? What if peeling back your armor could be less a descent into chaos and more an ascent into freedom? First, you must invert the logic you've lived by. Until now, defense has equaled safety, and vulnerability has equaled danger. But the paradox is this: the more you cling to safety, the more entrapped you become. The more you risk vulnerability, the more alive you feel. To rebel, you must choose uncertainty over certainty, mystery over pretense, raw feeling over practiced composure. Begin with the smallest act of defiance. Embrace a micro-vulnerability in your daily life. Speak your unrefined thought to a friend without editing for politeness. Post a photo that reveals an imperfection rather than a polished highlight. Ask a question you genuinely fear the answer to. These are not grand gestures, they're subversive strikes against the fortress of your persona. Each crack you create in that wall weakens its structural integrity. Consider the example of Søren Kierkegaard, who dared to publish his most intimate anxieties in his journals and letters, exposing the tremors of faith and doubt within a rigid society. His rebellion wasn't a riot in the streets. It was a solitary act of writing, a willingness to expose the fissures in his own belief. From that vulnerability emerged a philosophy that reshaped existential thought. You, too, can launch your rebellion in quiet acts of honesty. Next, challenge your cognitive habits, the neural grooves worn by fear. When you catch yourself filtering experience through the lens of what will they think, pause and reset. Consciously reframe. What do I want? Or what might I discover if I let go of control? With time, you'll retrain your brain to prize inquiry over approval. Celebrate each moment you choose curiosity above conformity. Historical rebels offer more blueprints. In 1917, the Russian avant-garde artist Kazimir Malevich smashed the conventions of representation with his black square, confessing that art could be a thought set free from the ballast of the object. He didn't worry about critics. He refused to play by their rules. In your life, the equivalent might be a career pivot that feels reckless, a passion project that lacks social cachet, or a bold confession that defies the role you've been assigned. These acts unleash new currents of possibility. You can also harness the power of radical transparency. Imagine gathering the people who know you best, friends, family, colleagues, and sharing one truth you've long suppressed. Not as a dramatic confession, but as an experiment in authenticity. Observe how they respond. More often than not, you'll discover that vulnerability invites empathy rather than judgment. Each honest exchange blows a hole in the armor, allowing genuine connection to flow in. Now, integrate the practice of shadow dialogue, inspired by Jungian psych. Dedicate 10 minutes each day to a written conversation with your shadow self, the part of you've buried beneath your public mask. Ask it, what do you fear? What do you desire? What have I ignored? Don't censor. Let every impulse surface. Over time, your conscious and shadow minds will begin to negotiate, dissolving the antagonism that fuels your defenses. Simultaneously, cultivate a new mantra. I am more than my performance. Repeat it when you feel the familiar tightening in your chest. This phrase is not a bland affirmation, it's a reminder that beneath every practiced gesture is a deeper current of being. Anchor it with a simple ritual. Pause, place a hand on your heart, and whisper those words. Over time, the mantra will become a beacon guiding you back to authenticity whenever you stray. Rebellion also requires community. Seek out kindred spirits who prize depth over decorum, who have the courage to show their flaws. A supportive circle can act as a testing ground for your emerging self. No masks required. These relationships become laboratories of authenticity, where you experiment with new ways of being and learn from each other's missteps. As the walls crumble, you'll feel an exhilarating rush of possibility, but be warned, collapse can feel terrifying. The void you once feared will gawk at you like a chasm. Yet if you resist the urge to scramble back to safety, you'll discover a bridge forming beneath your feet, built not of stone, but of choices, actions, and self. Before long, you'll notice something profound. Your life begins to ripple outward in unforeseen ways. Conversations sparked with newfound depth. Creative impulses, once dormant, awaken. You greet mornings not as an actor rehearsing lines, but as a traveler stepping into terror inc. And with each step, the rebellion grows not against others, but against the false self that held you captive. Still, this rebellion is only halfway. You've breached the walls of your defenses and reclaimed a measure of authenticity. Yet the final revelation, the one that transforms authenticity into wisdom, a truth so powerful, it will recast everything you thought you knew about self, world, and meaning. In the next and final section, you will confront that ultimate truth, a revelation that will not merely free you from your masks, but illuminate the hidden unity between vulnerability and strength, uncertainty and purpose. Prepare yourself. The ultimate realization is about to shatter every remaining illusion and reveal the path to a life lived fully, without apology. Beneath the rubble of your shattered defenses lies the ultimate truth, a revelation so seismic it dissolves every boundary you've drawn between self and world, strength and fragility, certainty and doubt. This truth whispers that vulnerability is not the absence of armor, but the alchemy that transmutes fear into power, that the void you feared is the very gateway to creation, and that your deepest wounds carry the seed of your greatest freedom. Imagine standing at the lip of existence, gazing into the abyss you once believed would consume you. You feel the wind of uncertainty buffeting your soul. But then you realize, the abyss is not a threat, it is an invitation. Every moment of raw exposure, every crack in your persona, has been a summons to step through and discover that the self you feared losing was never a fixed entity, but a fluid interplay of being and becoming. This ultimate truth was glimpsed by Schopenhauer in the stillness beyond desire, where the world's relentless will dissolves into tranquility. It echoed in Nietzsche's vision of the overman who fashioned himself from chaos, embracing suffering as the crucible of transformation. It resonated with Jung's call to individuate, to unite persona and shadow in a dance of wholeness. And it sang through Frankl's conviction that meaning emerges most vividly in the face of hardship, as if the soul needs a crucible to define itself. You now understand that your personality was never meant to be a static badge of identity, but a provisional structure, one that you can dismantle and rebuild at will. It was your training wheels, not the bicycle. Once you've learned to ride, the training wheels become a hindrance. And so it is with your defenses. They carry you through the terrain of social expectation. But once you learn to balance on the edge of uncertainty, they must go. What remains when the persona falls away is not emptiness, but presence, the unmediated moment of pure awareness. Here, you are not the witty one or the caretaker, but the living, breathing mystery of consciousness itself. In this unconstructed self, you discover that vulnerability and strength are two sides of the same coin, Showing your wounds grants you access to healing, and revealing your fears makes you fearless. This is the alchemy of authenticity. Pain transfigured into purpose. The cracks in your psyche become channels for light. Creativity flows through them. Relationships deepen around them, and compassion for yourself and others wells up from them. You learn that to love is to risk, to know is to admit ignorance, to live is to embrace him, and in that embrace lies your power. Consider the meditation masters who learn to welcome each sensation, pleasant or painful, as a visitor who brings a gift, the gift of insight, the gift of presence, the gift of liberation. You, too, can cultivate this practice. When fear arises, lean into it and ask, what does this part of me need to show me? When shame surfaces, cradle it gently and say, you are not my enemy. Over time, these inner conversations reshape your relationship with yourself and with the world. And as the final piece of the revelation falls into place, you recognize a profound unity. The walls between self and other dissolve into an ocean of empathy. Your authenticity becomes a mirror in which others glimpse their own courage to be real. You realize that by dismantling your fortress, you've built a bridge, one that connects hearts, ideas, and destinies. In this newfound paradigm, life ceases to feel like a performance on a perilous stage. It becomes a co-created journey, where uncertainty is the canvas for possibility, and vulnerability is the source of resilience. Every challenge is an invitation to deepen your wisdom. Every relationship is an altar of mutual revelation. Every breath is a prayer of gratitude for the rawness of existence. So step forward now into the vast theater of the unknown, unmasked and unguarded. Embrace the paradox that strength is born in weakness, that freedom is wedded to responsibility, that authenticity is an act of radical love for yourself, and love for whatever life unfolds. This is the final, most powerful realization that your true personality isn't a defense mechanism to be shed entirely, but an ongoing, creative expression of your eternal dance with vulnerability. It is a living tapestry woven from every wound, every triumph, every moment of courage to stand exposed. In this tapestry, you are both the weaver and the thread, holding within you the boundless potential to transform fear into freedom, isolation into connection, and mortality into meaning. Go now and live this revelation. Let your every action be a testament to the beauty of unarmed presence, and know that the life you claim in this authenticity will echo across the world, inviting others to peel back their own masks, discover their inner light, and join you in a chorus of unguarded souls, free at last.